public relations and communications. Diversity is increasingly important in communications, but it's so undervalued in many instances. So I'm really proud of Alpha Productions and Hispanic Communications and Marketing, or Marketing and Communications Association, for sponsoring this event tonight. And especially grateful to our panelists, some of whom have traveled a long distance to come here to be with you tonight. It's quite a compliment to all of you that they were willing to take this time and make this effort to come and talk about a very, very important topic. So I promise I'm going to make this short, and I'm just going to do some brief introductions of everybody. First of all, I want to especially thank Sydney Dixon and Josh Ferrari for your work in this event. Many others of you contributed a lot, and forgive me for not naming everybody, but they especially put a great deal of effort into this. So, our esteemed panelists, I'm going to start with Bill Amata. Bill is a member of our Public Relations Advisory Council. He is also founder, chairman, and chief collaboration officer of IW Group, a full-service communications firm that specializes in the growing multicultural markets in the United States. And I just want to say that Bill, whenever I've been in his presence, when he contributes something, it's like E.F. Hutton. We all lean in to hear what he has to say because he's so insightful and so generous with your knowledge and time. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Cheryl Proctor-Rogers is PR strategist and executive coach of A Step Ahead PR Consulting and Coaching, a global consulting practice. She helps organizations focus their efforts to build, enhance, and protect their brand reputations. She traveled from Chicago to be with us today, so thank you so much, Cheryl. Barbara Bermudez, one of our stars from recent times, a recent graduate of our college and former Alpha Productions member, is now an account coordinator at Ketchum Public Relations based in Atlanta, Georgia. As part of her position, she supports various account teams with U.S. Hispanic Media Relations. Welcome back, Barbara. And then Deborah Bowie was recently selected as President CEO of United Way of North Central Florida here in Gainesville. She has an extensive career in community and economic development, mostly as an executive working in the Chamber of Commerce industry. Deborah, thank you so much for coming tonight. And then last but not least, our moderator and also an alumnus of this college is Florida Bridgewater Alford, is Director of Campus Communications Outreach for UF. Prior to that, she held various new staff roles at the Gainesville Sun, of which I am also an alum.
Right.
She was the Sun's first web producer and a member of its award-winning online redesign committee for GainesvilleSun.com. Florida, thank you so much for doing this. I'm going to hand it off to you.
All right. Yeah, let's give our incredible and extraordinary panelists another hand for being here. They traveled. And I want to thank each of you for being here to share your insight and incredible knowledge with our amazing students, because you all are amazing. So thank you, Dean McFarland. The United States Bureau of Labor Statistics has confirmed what many in the U.S. already believe to be true. The public relations profession in the U.S. has a diversity problem. As of 2011, the BLS reported that only 8.7% of African American, blacks, 7.3% of Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, and 15.3% of Hispanics, Latinos possess jobs in the fields of advertising, marketing, and public relations. Did you listen to those? Did you hear those numbers? Now, would you agree that we have a lost problem? In other words, we are lost without diversity. Leading brands that want to build relationships in diverse and emerging markets around the world know it begins with recruiting, developing, and retaining talent reflecting their client population. These companies know that they can develop the most robust marketing plans, but at the end of the day, consumers want to trust and do business with companies who understand them from different economic, political, and cultural perspectives. And that's why we're here tonight, to have a thoughtful, informative, and valuable discussion. We want to hear from our engaged panelists first, and then we'll open the floor about 15 minutes before the end of the session and open the floor for 15 minutes for Q&A. And please join the conversation online by using the hashtag Diversity UF. So let's get to it. Are you ready?
Right.
All right. Okay. So let's talk about some of these questions. What impact does diversity have on communications? Who would like to start? I'll choose. Let's go, Deborah.
I knew you were going to start. A huge impact. So I didn't say, in my early career, I spent 10 years as a reporter. Started out in newspaper business and then transitioned on to television. And so this is such an interesting topic because in so many places in America, diversity means so many different things. So I spent a lot of my career in the Deep South. I consider Alabama the Deep South, Georgia even deeper. And in those communities, I grew up in Miami, Florida. So diversity in Miami, it's a global community. So diversity wasn't just how many African Americans do you have on your staff or how many women do you have. And but in the South, diversity was largely African Americans and the issue of African Americans, the emerging Hispanic market, particularly in rural parts of the South, is relatively new. So it was always intriguing to me that people in positions in the communications business couldn't understand how let's just talk about a newscast. So when you've got your staff together around the around your rundown table and you're going through what's going to lead, it's important to have, and I don't use the word diversity, for me it's about inclusion. It's important to have people from different backgrounds, socioeconomic, cultural, racial, different parts of the world, sexual orientation, disabilities, whatever that is. In my mind, the more people you have engaged in that conversation, I always thought the better the newscast. A good example of that would be, I don't know about you, but being 5'11", African American, wearing cornrows is not a description. You just indicted half of the city of Birmingham. And so I always felt like I was always the one jumping up and down in the rundown meeting, that why is it we feel the need to use race as an identifier when that's not an identifier? And in that market, I was always labeled the troublemaker. It didn't bother me one bit, because somebody needs to be the voice of reason in those environments to raise the provocative questions that are legitimate questions. Because the diversity inclusion issue, to me, is not just about who is on the staff, but it's about who's sitting where on the staff. There are a lot of organizations in the Chamber of Commerce industry, and I'll pick on that one since I just left it. Lots of women dominate that industry. But when I emceed the national convention several years ago after having been gone for 2 years, no offense to any Republican in this room, but I thought I was at the GOP convention. I thought, oh my gosh, this is the most this group, everyone in here, largely I'm looking at, it was very vanilla. And I thought, these are chambers from around the country. And I said to the president of the National Association, what happened? I know the recession, a lot of people changed jobs, but what happened? And he said, I think that's a valid point. To his credit, they launched an effort on diversity and inclusion, and I participated in that panel to give executives an opportunity to continue their profession, become a certified chamber executive, to start leading in these organizations. And we had a lot of discussion about the diversity inclusion model. But your question about communications.
Right.
So to me, I don't relegate the diversity inclusion challenge to just communication. I think it permeates everything about a business. Its bottom line, the employee morale, how it communicates, and communication can take a lot of forms. It's what you say, it's what you don't say. It's the image or the brand that you're projecting when people walk into your boardroom and they look up on the wall when there's a company picture and it's 98% white in a community that might have 42% African Americans or Latinos or you name it. So to me, the communications is just kind of one piece of a very intrinsically connected issue when you are dealing with managers who, to me, that's where a lot of it comes from, the recruitment end, who don't see it as a necessary part of running a business. It is a necessary part of running a business. To me, being competitive, being relevant, being reflective means you start with that first.
Right.
Do you have the right people in the organization? So I feel passionately about that, as you can tell.
And I appreciate that. We all do. Cheryl, what about you? What do you think what impact does diversity have on communication from your standpoint? You're more than 30 years in this business.
Well, I think certainly the public relations and communications field is really uniquely positioned to be the moral compass for an organization or its clients. And I advocate for the professional at any level to work across an institution. So if you're inside the organization, I think it's important that you develop relationships across the organization and not just working, only in the public relations department, really understanding what's happening in HR, what's happening in finance, what's happening with facilities, so that you have a pretty good understanding of what the culture and I really apologize for that. I'm going to turn that off in just a second. And so I feel that that's really key. And I also, I often ask this question when we're talking about diversity. I think it's important to make sure that diversity lives at home too. So when a person shows me their photo album, and that could be hard copy or it could be online, and
Or on your phone now.
or on your phone, and all of the pictures, everyone in the photo looks like them, and then but they're talking about how important they feel diversity is, and so then that's when I wonder, is that something you just do at the office? And so that's why I feel it's really important that we don't become trapped by confirmation bias, because it's very easy and comfortable to only associate with people that understand your experience, know who you are, live in your community if your community is pretty if you're living in an African American community, or if you're living in a Hispanic community, or you're living in a Jewish community, it's very easy to be very comfortable there. But when you step outside of your comfort zone and start experiencing things that are not so comfortable and understanding other cultures, then it becomes really impactful in your personal life. And guess what happens? You bring that to work. And when you bring it to work, you'll find opportunities to educate the uneducated about differences. I could become very frustrated when I'm sometimes asked to join a committee or join a team because I'm Black. We want the Black perspective. Well, what you're going to get is you're going to get Cheryl's perspective. Cheryl can't speak for the Black community. But if you're really looking to have some expertise about the African American community, let me make some recommendations. While I am an African American woman, and I do pride myself on knowing generally what's going on in my community, I'm not an expert. And so I'm often asking individuals to really understand that just having someone in the room that looks like me is just really not enough. And that it's really important to know what you're getting and to make sure that you're thinking about how it is you're living your life, what you're bringing to the organization, and if this is an area of expertise that you want to have, understand that just being Black is not enough.
I mean, I agree. I agree. Bill, would you like to?
This is a very interesting topic
It
for
is.
me.
Yeah.
Diversity and inclusion are the buzzwords, but I have to tell you what Deborah said really strikes a nerve for me, because it's okay to have diversity and inclusion. So I could include Cheryl and Deborah at the table and say I have Black people at the table, but if I don't engage the people at the table, then diversity and inclusion is meaningless. And the thing about communication that is so important to have diversity, and I want to mention something right in the very front. We need white people involved in this discussion because whites are part of that diversity. So I just want to put that out there. I don't want to blame white people or white males, because we need white males and we need whites to be a part of this discussion. But I do want to say that when there is no diversity in communications and journalism, we are robbed of the stories that each of these individuals bring to the table, their experience, their viewpoints, their lens, their ideas, their thoughts. And what happens when we don't have diversity at the table? We turn into a community of PC people that don't want to push the boundaries, that don't want to have a real conversation, and we shy away from that. And so I think that when you have diversity, it opens up a whole wide range of ideas, thoughts, discussions, both painful and both happy, that allows you to get away from being PC. Because what makes me sad is that we spend a lot of time protecting what we say, and that robs our communities of the contributions that each of us bring, no matter if you're Black, Latino, Asian American, Native American, gay or lesbian, person that is transgendered, a person with a disability, a white male, women. There is rich diversity, and the nice thing about living in the United States is we have that richness here, but often we don't take advantage of it. So if communications is going to survive, then we need to push our boundaries a little bit and not only embrace people, but engage them in a conversation and take a few risks with those conversations and really get to know the heart and soul of those people.
Thank you, Bill. Barbara, now adding to what Bill has said, and our other panelists as well, when you build upon that, I mean, wouldn't you say diversity is good business? I mean, working at Ketchum, I mean, is this a part of the conversation, the discussion moving forward? Because in a few years, we will not have any, you will see a multicultural world. That's it.
Right.
There's no turning back at this point.
Talking about buzzwords,
Yeah.
I guess our buzzword right now is called borderless. It's all about, making sure it's not like cross-cultural, cross-nationalities, cross-platforms, whether it's, like healthcare or brand. So for me, I'm Peruvian, born and raised, moved to South Florida, a very diverse multicultural community. Same words like white, Hispanic was never an issue. I was used to that, I'm Hispanic. Yes, you could ask me if I speak Spanish, I'm not gonna be offended by it. But going up to Atlanta, it was a big change. And going into an agency where I was the only Spanish-speaking person was definitely a big change for me, and it was a door opening in a way, because then I became senior counsel. And
Wow.
I was basically brought to the table to ask what the Hispanic community has to say about this.
Wow.
And I was like, I'm an account coordinator.
You have power.
So it was definitely about educating and bringing up the fact that, it's not my opinion. This is my opinion. I don't represent the Hispanic community.
Yeah.
Diversity is, especially for my expertise, the Hispanic community, it's not just about translating messages from English to Spanish. Are they relevant? Are they meaningful? Is it lost in translation? There's so much more. And I, at least in my agency, I had the opportunity to educate or share that perspective with my teammates, with our office director, and we were able to adapt the campaigns accordingly. But I definitely think there's a lot of we need more. I can't be the only one.
Right.
At a global agency in a big city like Atlanta, so multicultural as Atlanta, representing everyone. And from what I have seen, it's also not just about inclusion, but it's really about speaking out, because a lot of people are so unaware of it. So just the other day, I was speaking with a client, and when I said that I was from Peru, I was asked if I spoke Peruvian. Now, thank God, it was a conference call. So they couldn't see my expression, just things like that. So it's educating the client also about, what diversity is and why it should be included in our campaigns and not just have the general market approach.
Right.
So for me, it's been a lot of just sharing my 2 cents up the ladder.
But you're not tired yet, are you?
I'm not.
Okay, good. Because we need your energy.
It's something I'm
We
very
need
passionate
that
about. I will
there.
continue
Yeah.
to speak out. And
Good.
I had a couple clients cut back on U.S. Hispanic efforts. Like even against, and that's what's really sad about diversity. It's like companies will try it. You know, we're gonna try to reach the, U.S. Hispanic market, and if it doesn't work the first time around, they'll cut it. And it's 1.5 trillion by 2015.
Right. Right. That's right. So when you think about diversity, does this include other aspects of diversity, such as diversity of thought, whites, people with disabilities, women, veterans, older adults? Talk to me a little bit about that, Cheryl.
Well, I like to give this example where this is an imaginary company, and they are really adamant about making sure that they have all these voices around the table. So they make sure that there's a black, there's a Hispanic, there's an Asian, there's someone old, there's someone, some different challenges, and so, that for the first couple of meetings over the first year, the discussions are robust, and some people are crying because there's this learning that's going on, and is diversity ever going to work? And so 10 years later, you go by that same conference room and everybody's laughing, the meetings are lasting 15 minutes, and you look inside and it's like, wow, it really worked. No, they're just all thinking alike now. So diversity of thought is very important. And sometimes cultures within organizations can be so strong that it can almost eliminate the differences amongst those individuals. And so it's really important for the leadership to really understand that having diversity is more than just having people around the table that look different from one another, but also making sure that the culture of the organization is not really killing diversity of thought and ideas, and that we're not allowing some of the expertise about the different trends in marketing approaches and some of the statistics around things such as buying power, that all of those are still coming into play, and that just because we're no longer arguing and educating one another about why we want to have cornbread at this event or we don't, I want to just give one little example.
Please.
So a lot of times I could come into a group and I'm talking about diversity, and I've got my presentation and I'm saying, you need to step outside of your comfort zone. You need to do some things that are not comfortable for you. Go to a festival you've never been to. Read a publication that you've never read that is specific to a particular group of people. Watch something on television. And if you're a liberal, listen to Russ Limbaugh. Do these things. And so one Sunday I'm sitting at home and I'm bored and I'm not going to do anything, but I'm going to just surf. And I'm like, it's 3 channels with NASCAR on it. I'm like, I don't want to see NASCAR. I'm looking. But then it hit me. Cheryl, you're not practicing what you preach. I knew nothing about NASCAR. But here it was monopolizing my television choices. And then when I did stop and look and realize that there must be 100,000 people at this event. And if one of my clients ever asked me how to reach those people in that stand, I wouldn't have a clue. And so it's so important that we understand that we have to be of the world, and that we can't just be these, like bystanders and letting the world go by when it doesn't seem interesting to us. And that we would it's got to be an effort.
Has to be conscious.
It
has
has
to
to
be.
be conscious.
Yeah. Yeah. It does. What? Phil, you wanted to
I'm not
say?
surprised that you were puzzled about NASCAR. Just look at NASCAR, and finding a black person at a NASCAR event is like trying to find Aldo.
But NASCAR, I think they're trying.
They're trying,
They
they
are
are
trying.
trying.
They've tried.
I think diversity of thought is critically important, but I also want people to remember, and Deborah mentioned this, that thought isn't always expressed. Sometimes it's body language. Sometimes it's the way people feel when they walk in a room. And I mentioned this to yesterday, that sometimes when I had that German and that Taiwanese guy say, you know, why do Americans say walk the walk and talk the talk? Why can't they walk and just shut up? Why can't they feel the essence of a room? Because I know when I walk in the room if I'm welcome. I don't need anybody to tell me that. I know it. I feel it. I sense it. And I just wanted to give you one little story. I mean, a Vietnamese, and I'm actually guilty of some of this lack of diversity in thinking, but I actually had a Vietnamese woman come up to me and say, Bill, you're a genius in marketing. I'm going to start a restaurant. And I'm an immigrant and I love the American dream. I said, what is this restaurant going to be called? And she goes, Taste of Saigon Street. And I said, that's disgusting. Saigon is filthy. What American would go to your restaurant? The smells, the odors, the dirt on the street, the dogs running around. Nobody's going to want to eat at your restaurant. And she said, Bill, if you want to get a flavor of who I am, you have to taste the street. I would never say taste the street, but then I realized that's her frame of reference, that's who she is, that's what she values, and I realized I made a mistake. And so now I tell people, don't walk the walk and talk the talk, but taste the street. And real diversity of thought includes unspoken words and feelings and nuance, so we got to think about that as well.
So you can't see this chart from where you sit.
Yeah.
You
I
you
can.
think of it. So this is why I'm sharing this chart, because America, as we know, is changing, right? So this is a chart of the changing face of America in 50 years. And I just want to bring your attention to this big shade area down here.
Share it
So
with us.
in
Tell us
50
what it says.
years,
Yeah.
this shade, the diversity discussion is going to look very different, because in 50 years, the minorities will actually be white Americans. They're about 60-something% now. They're projecting by 2060, they'll be at 43%. Not much change in the African American group. And you know, you talk about borders. Well, I want to address that for a moment. But the largest group, of course, is Hispanic, which I'm from Miami. There are Hispanics come in all shades.
That's
and so
right.
don't be offended. You were asked when I moved to Alabama. So my mother's Jewish, Ukrainian Jew. And my father is from Andros Island. In Miami, it didn't matter. Everybody thought I was Puerto Rican. And when I moved to Alabama, they actually asked me if I spoke Puerto Rican, and I thought, you mean Spanish?
No, you speak Peruvian.
So the diversity discussion will change, because you know then it'll be a difference of who's in the so-called minority group. But here's what I really want to say about this generation. And I feel like I've lived it because it's been, of course, part of my life. You know, people would make assumptions, like they always do, that, you know, my mom must have marched in the 60s. And my mom was a Jewish woman from Flatbush, Brooklyn, New York.
Oh my God, that's great.
You can't get more Jewish than that, okay? You can't get more Jewish than that. She doesn't have a clue what it was like to grow up as a person of color in the 50s and the 60s. But people would make that assumption. So in my house, that is how we have always lived. What I love about this generation is how irrelevant probably this conversation is to so many of them, because there are so many multi-ethnic people in this world today who have dark-skinned grandmothers and an uncle with blonde hair and blue eyes, and I think they look at the rest of us, and I'm not going to say us, but I feel like they look at older generations and think, what's wrong with you guys? You know, I don't know about you, but every week I chuckle at what these huge PR fiascos turn out to be in marketing. Because every week you can just count on it. And I love young people taking to Twitter and calling them out for Annie. Do I need to say anything else? You go into the store to buy something, and all of a sudden the little cute African American girl is nowhere on the marketing, as though we don't recognize that. And so, you know, that might be trite, but where it plays out in a real sad sense is when you see Ferguson. You know, the shooting in Ferguson was, I think, the thing that pushed people over the edge. Because when you start digging down into that story, what were you hearing? This is a police department that does not reflect this community. Period. They don't reflect us. We've been dealing with this for decades. That plays out in so many communities. Communities, whether it's African American, people of color. I've heard it all of my life, everywhere that I've lived. It's not just an issue that's in the South. It's everywhere. Because I think this country is changing. And so people, I think, are now starting to, you know, it used to be, you know, the buzzword was diversity and, you know, you need to reflect the community. It's 24% African American. We need to have 24% of our workforce. I've been in some ridiculous discussions like that too. And it's interesting because I find when I talk to a lot of young people, and I have a daughter who's 20 who's in school in New Orleans, so only my daughter could go to an HBCU. Her very best friend is a white gay guy. And then she has another friend who grew up in the islands. I mean, that's the world she lives in. I love that that is my daughter and that she accepts people for who they are and accepts everything that she gets from that relationship. But I was stunned when she told me that because HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, are very traditional. And so when I heard that they even had a transgender chapter on campus, or, you know, that I knew then we are living in a different time, that this generation expects it because it's part of their life. And so for her, and I'm going to bash Alabama for a moment, I'm talking about the school, because when we were college hunting, Alabama, Roll Tide, I'm so sorry, Roll Tide, I have to go there. They had the whole center aisle, and you know, they were, you want to come to our school. And she breezed right by. So the guy stopped her and said, excuse me, don't you want a brochure? And she says, I am not interested in coming to Alabama. And for her, it was about, now, I'm not saying it's a bad school. What I am saying is that for her, she's looking for very specific things in her college experience. She wanted to be in a culturally diverse community. She wanted to go to a university that had a purpose and a mission. She wanted to be at a school where diversity and inclusion was just there. It wasn't fake, it wasn't pushed out, it wasn't a quota system. She didn't want to be in a campus where every week there's a scandal because, oh my God, they won't pledge an African-American young woman in a sorority, or you can't tell someone that you're gay or, God forbid, you're transgender. I mean, there are issues about living in the South. But I love that this generation, for them, the conversation has shifted. And a lot of that is, I think, because of charts like this, that you have families where the whole discussion of race is irrelevant. And I think the inclusion issue for me is that I have a child who has autism. And so when I think about inclusion, I don't think about race. I'm thinking about, are we including everyone? I mean, the number of children I think that often comes with the whole racial discussion. But this chart is an interesting discussion in a lot of places and a lot of political arenas because it scares people. And at the end of the day, I think you said it, you know, we're scared of what we don't know. And so, you know, if you walk the walk, walk it in every aspect of your life. Yes. Period. Walk it in every aspect of your life. I go home to a Jewish woman who's keeping the kids right now. And you know, my kids eat gefilte fish, they eat bagels. I mean, you know, that's just my life experience. And I am open to them being exposed to as much as they possibly can because I know they're going to be better people. Because if your perspective is open and you can appreciate, the interesting thing is the more you get to know people who are completely different, the more you realize you're just alike. You're just the same. You just want the same thing.
That's true.
So
I took a picture of that and make sure everybody got it.
And so I got this
We need to
from,
make it into a flyer.
and you can get it off of the internet. It's The Changing Face of America, and it's the total U.S. population by race and ethnicity from 1960 to 2060. And so there'll be some variations, but it's about the same.
2060 is right around the corner.
Yeah, we're going to be there.
Yeah, I heard that the person who's going to live to be 150 is already born.
All right.
I heard that. That's interesting.
How old would they be right now?
I don't know, but just the idea that
That's pretty
we're going to be
fascinating.
living longer.
Yeah.
So there's hope for us.
Yes, we have time. We have time to get it right.
We have time to get it right. And then how do we get beyond, for example, just calling it diversity? Barbara, when do we get beyond that? What is it? What's the other term? What is it? Will we need a term? You know, in 50 years.
it's a key moment when we accept that it's not like, for example, for the communication stuff, you don't have like a general market and you don't have like a U.S. Hispanic market or an African American. It's just their market. Like it's not about multicultural marketing, but marketing to like a multicultural America. You know, that's, and I think Coke kind of started going that direction with the Super Bowl ad last year. And it was like a little taste of like, we're not there quite yet, but hopefully moving in that direction. Because with whites be the minority, and my question is that, well, would Hispanics or any other ethnicity be represented that way in the communications field? Because then you have a minority reaching out to the majority. So now that's another issue that will be coming in the next years. But for me, it's hopefully that moment when everyone just accepts and it gets to a point that everyone, you know, so I consider, like, I guess my generation, I'm more of like global citizens, like with studying abroad, with college students going abroad every year, everyone's exposed to different cultures, different countries. You know, we're more open to like learning about each other. I always like to surround myself with like international people wherever I go and like meet new people. So hopefully we'll get to a point that we just accept that, you know, we all come from different walks and paths, and, you know, we have different races in our family tree, and it would just be a multicultural America, and that'll be it.
And building on that, Barbara, you know, I would like to hear from all of you, because you're all leaders in your organizations. You either own them or you currently are the CEO, president of them. How then do we encourage, recruit a global workforce for that particular for communication? How do we do it? What do we do? How do we recruit this talent?
First of all, diversity will never be different. Will always be important, even though I hate the term, because as long as 1% of the wealth is controlled by, 90% of the wealth is controlled by 1% of the population, we're going to have inequity. And so I think that when I'm looking for employees, I'm looking for employees that are not going to embrace the conventional wisdom. And if somebody walks in and says, "Bill, I want to level the playing field," I say, "There's the door." The playing field will never be level, at least in my lifetime, and I doubt it will be level in any of your lifetime. But if you tell me that you're building a skateboard to navigate that unlevel playing field, let's talk. So I think we got to get people that are unafraid to express themselves and not worry so much about the consequences, so that we could force and have constructive intellectual dialogue. And if we can't do it in the university, then we're in trouble. And I was having a conversation with Ryan just a little while ago, and I have to tell you, the university has to make changes if it expects the people that are graduating to change. So when I heard about the dean here not being, you know, a PhD person, I was amazed. I said, that's groundbreaking.
She's amazing.
But I have to tell you, what's also important is that we have to eliminate these boundaries that we create at the academy. Advertising, journalism, and communication, as we move forward, they will all blur. And if we're going to survive in communications, we got to start blurring that line at the institutions where we're training our kids. So I'm looking for people that are going to challenge the system and say, I have an idea, I'm going to take that idea and I believe I can help change the world, and here are the steps I'm going to take. And I want people to talk about the things that they value and embrace first. And then we can have a dialogue about what makes us different and unique. So I think moving forward, all of us have to get people to be unafraid, take risks, calculated risks. I don't expect you to jump off of the freeway, or say something rude or stab somebody. But I want you to take risks that are going to really challenge conventional system and turn it on its head. Then we're going to have a real conversation about what diversity means.
And I think that it's important to have courage. And when you think about the students that are here today, and so what could you do today to really position yourself to create the kind of environments where diversity is something that you're able to talk about and have an impact on. You know, I don't work with Edelman, but I think what they've done is really significant. For years, you know, we used to do the rounds with the agencies to try to get them to have more people of color. And yes, there were a lot of different things, that we would do or they would do. And you'd go back 5 years later and the agencies were back, it's like back to where they were because to Barbara's point, it doesn't work. We hired one. Okay. And of course the environment was so hostile, the person took all the information they could get and they went and started their own firm. But what Edelman said is, and what we know to be true, is when you tie it to the performance metrics and make it part of your increase and you support it, not just say, okay, you got to, you got to interview more people of color, have more people of color in the pool, you've got to do all of these things, then you've got to see how over time things will change. And things are not going to change overnight. And so what they've done is because I used to go to those organizations and there was maybe one or two people, one Hispanic, one black. But because they've done this, the numbers have increased significantly. They've doubled, and they'll continue to double. And we'll continue to have an opportunity for a diverse population of communicators to come through some of these organizations and benefit from some of the on-the-job training and the special training that takes place there. And to have the understanding and the courage that it takes to say or to ask an employer when you get there. And you don't have to be a person of color to ask this question. You say you want to be diverse, but what are you doing to ensure that that happens within your organization? And you don't have to be a VP to ask that question. You don't have to ask it in a nasty way. You can just quietly ask the question. And then when they say, well, we've tried that, didn't work, have some examples at the ready. We can no longer say we don't know. There are some companies who are making strides in this area, and they are our models right now. 10 years from now, we could go back to those companies and it could be back the way it was. But as long as there's some examples, when you talk to Cheryl Proctor Rogers or Bill Amata, we're not going to have a team that's not diverse. But there are so many agencies and corporations that do not have that diversity, and you're going to work for some of them. And so when they bring in one person, what is your contribution going to be to create the environment where that person does feel welcome? I came from a family where, we were just raised to have really high self-esteem. We think we can do anything with anybody. So when I first went to my first PRSA chapter meeting and no one spoke to me, I wasn't offended at all. I just started walking up to people and introducing myself and inserting myself into conversations. Everyone doesn't have that, and I understand that. But there's something that you can do, but you're going to have to step outside of your comfort zone a little bit. So start thinking now about what you're doing on campus. Where's the diversity here tonight? And how can you, as a student, start practicing, working that muscle to make sure that there is diversity not only in your life, but in everything that you do, and you start asking the questions.
Well, I appreciate the challenge. I know our students appreciate it because that sounded like a challenge. But we're Gators. We accept challenges very well here. But going back to our students, I appreciate the movement of those companies of Edelman. But I would hope that there is a sense of urgency because at some point, having one or two probably will not be enough. So I hope that this is another challenge for our students, is to think about that, as they go on to these new companies and they make the change for the better for them. Mm-hmm. So that was a great discussion, don't you think? I think so. So now we're going to turn the questions to you. If you have a question, we have about 15 minutes. Right. Now we have about 10 minutes. Sorry, Josh. You trying. But we have 10 minutes for questions, and we would love to hear from you. So if you have a question, please, you stand in the aisle and let us know, and let us hear from you.
On any subject.
On any subject.
Yeah.
If you want to know, yes, please. Share.
Sorry for the jersey.
Oh, you're fine. It says New York.
As long as it doesn't say Alabama.
Hi, my name is Rolanda Charles, and I'm a third-year PR major. My question is, you hear a lot about how if you're in an interview and one person's white and another person's a person of color, of course they're going to choose a person of color because they want diversity in their organization. How do you feel about that? And how does that make the person getting picked feel? Because me personally, I don't want to get picked because I'm black. I want to get picked because I add value to the company. So how does that make you guys feel?
I don't care. I don't care. Because you know what? If they hire me, they got more than they knew. They not only got an opportunity to say they've got a person of color on their team, they have an amazing talent. And so I don't care. So you determine what it is you really care about. Do you care about the opportunity to learn your craft, practice your craft, or do you care why you got the job?
I do care. You better tell me what you're all about. I won't give you a break because you're black or white. Mm-hmm. You just got to come in. You got to tell me what you're made of and what you can do to advance what we're trying to do in our clients. So I'm going to really quiz you. I won't give you any special breaks because I don't think that will help you or help the community. So I'm going to be just as hard on you as I would as anybody else that comes through the door, because you're going to need to prove to me that you are going to bring value to the organization, to the other staff, and to the clients and people we represent. So I'm not going to choose you because you're black.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of organizations that do not have the Bill Amata perspective.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's true.
Yeah. And so if you get an opportunity to work at an organization that you've identified that aligns with your values and is going to be able to give you the opportunity to practice your craft like you want to practice it, and you interview and you negotiate your salary and you get that job, then you focus on what it is that's going to get you to the next position.
I wouldn't let it define you, because I don't know if I got hired because I was the only Hispanic person in the office or I was just as good as the person next to me. But I don't want to also be just limited to he was Hispanic or just like the Hispanic girl in the office. No, just prove yourself and don't let it limit you. And like you said, make sure you're getting as much as the guy next to you, or and just fight for it, because agencies are tricky. Hires, fight.
I agree with you on that.
I would. So, are you saying that people would tell you that the person of color would get the position?
Yes, you hear that a lot. It won't be directly, but you'll hear word of mouth.
I hear it too.
So I think what's interesting about that is I heard that a lot in news, and I don't know where people got that from. Because that's not true. Because you can walk in so many newsrooms, and if that were true, you'd see more color in the newsroom. People would say that, well, you're going to get the job because they interview. So, you hear it. So here's the way that I've always approached everything in communications. Because, to me, the diversity issue, for me, there was a lot that was going on in management where I thought there was no diversity. So sometimes we get caught up over the visible parts of an organization, not realizing that the real decisions are often coming from management. So here's what I would always say to anyone who I was mentoring or working with when I left the business and when I was in the business. You be prepared when you go. Never make any assumptions when you are a candidate that, I am probably going to get this position because there are very few women or there are very few African Americans. You just walk in there, you be prepared, you take every excuse off the table. You make them figure out a reason that they shouldn't give you the job. Never worry about who else is going after the job. You just be the best at it so that when you are putting your name in the hat, you've earned it. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to have detractors who will say, she got the job because she was a woman. She got the job because she was pretty. She got the job because she was blonde. I mean, you're going to hear it all. But you have to know you got the job because you were qualified. That's the most important thing. And sometimes people will get a break, and maybe it wasn't something that they earned. And that happens, particularly in the communications field. There are people who, God bless them, I always love those people who were anchors and say, well, I majored in economics. Well, I'm sure everybody who majored in journalism feels real happy about you being here right now. So whatever break you get, when you get it, and sometimes you'll just get that lucky break, get in there and work hard to earn your place. I really believe, and you try not to feel this way, but I do believe the pressure is on a woman. The pressure is on a woman of color. The pressure tends to be on Hispanic. If you're the first, you want to be that one to say, gosh, I really want to do the right thing and make a good impression so I can kick the door wide open for somebody after me. So that is not the discussion anymore after I'm no longer here. So you just get as qualified as you possibly can. That would be my advice.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was great. You can just stand. I think we could hear from
Yes,
you.
we can.
Wow, this is scary. Hello everyone, my name is Agassi Rodriguez. I'm a fourth year public relations major. My question to you, I know Barbara spoke about moments of education, such as when the man said if you spoke Peruvian. What have been some instances in your workplace or in your fields in which you feel like you've educated someone or gotten a chance to give some insight into your own background or diversity in that sense?
For me, it's always being asked to the table because I know all about the Black community and explaining that there are people in my immediate family and in my immediate circle who haven't traveled as extensively as I have, that don't have the education, the contacts, or the experience that I have. So just educating those that there are some things that are unique about the African American culture, but I am not the voice, and so it's important that we bring people in, and it's not just me, and that we have expertise on whatever the market is you're trying to reach. And I think Barbara said it best, that you don't take this English brochure and translate it into Spanish and think you've done your job, or take all of the white actors off the ad and put in Black folks and then ship the ad out. So I think for me that was it. It was this constantly educating people that just because I was the first this, the first that, the youngest this, the youngest that, you can see all that in my bio, that doesn't make me an expert on the African American community. That is not my area of expertise. And so you'll find that with men, you'll be a man and they'll say, okay, we bring you in because we need a man's perspective. You're going to get your perspective.
For me, it's when one of my clients called me up and invited me in and said, Bill, I need to speak to you. Why are Black people so militant and Latinos so clueless? And why is your community so easy to work with? And I went, what is that all about? And I think it's because Asian Americans are the model minority And because we are viewed as a model minority, good students, great in math, engineers and doctors, we become invisible. And the black community, the Latino community, particularly the African American community, don't always mention us because we're invisible. And we talked a little bit about Ferguson. Well, nobody talked about the story of the Asian store owner or the Latino and the whites that were displaced or the blacks that were displaced on their jobs. And I think that conversation excludes our perspective. And but it started off with somebody saying, black people are crazy and militant, and Latinos, they're uneducated, and Asians are so easy to work with, and I'm so happy that I'm working with you. Can you give me perspective on black people and Latinos? And I went, first of all, you got to understand that we're not the model minority, and so that's how it got started. So.
It's really interesting.
Well, wow.
Well, I am the expert on Ukrainian and West Indian. Right now. I've never had that issue, so I think for me, I always rise to the opportunity to do something that people don't expect. So when we were in the newsroom, and they say, "Who wants to go to NASCAR?" I'll go, and I went, and I had a great time, by the way. And I'm not a NASCAR fan, but I'll tell you, I didn't have an instance where people didn't want to interview with me. I mean, it was Alabama, okay, it was Talladega. But I didn't think twice. That's a story that I want to do because I don't know anything about NASCAR for more cultural reasons than anything else.
Yes.
So for me, it's always about looking for the opportunity to do something that people would just not expect, because I know people would make an assumption immediately that they know something about me and they don't. So I always use the opportunity to educate them. We had a Ukrainian delegation come over when I worked for the public sector. And they had a translator. We had a sister city relationship, and there were maybe 15 of them. And through their translator, they came to the chamber, and I told the translator, my mom's family is from the Ukraine. You could have just seen like this collective across the table. They all looked. And I thought, because we look so much alike. But it was an opportunity for me, again, to just break down that wall. And that's what I love about this generation, because I don't look out at an audience and make an assumption that I have no idea. This room might have 40% of you may be Latino for all I know. 20% of you may be biracial. I don't know. But I believe that the conversations that are happening in a lot of places now, not everywhere, because there are still some places where you walk in and you think, oh my gosh, did I just move back in time? And a lot of those places happen to be in the South, not only exclusively in the South. But there are a lot of communities like Gainesville. One of the reasons I really like living here is I'm not walking around self-conscious when I'm out with my mom and my kids. No one's ever said, is this your mom? Are these her grandkids? I mean, I distinctly remember going out in Miami as a kid with my sister and my mom on Easter Sunday. We're all dressed in the exact ugly 70s purple dress with the sheer jackets. And I was 7 years old, and the waitress said, is this on the same check? And I thought, no, I just found this white woman wandering around. And I said, oh my God, we're matching. You should pick up my tab. So I just, I don't make any assumptions. And if it's an opportunity to do something that takes me out of my comfort zone, which is not much, because I'm comfortable anywhere, but I do it. And I do it because it's also a way to get the other person comfortable with, not what I expected. And so I have 6-year-old triplets. That'll be the only thing you remember. And I have a 20-year-old daughter. And there's a big color variation between these triplets and the oldest daughter. And my oldest daughter is the most culturally diverse person I have ever known. And I get a kick out of how stereotyped she is when people say, aren't you from Alabama? And then she introduces my mother, her Ukrainian Jewish grandmother. So I think it is important to start at home. Not everybody has that eclectic, family mix, but you are so much richer as a person by doing that in your own inner circle. What you get from what other people bring to that relationship. And I really say this particularly to African Americans because, there's always this talk about cultural acceptance. And I find that a lot of African Americans, particularly in the South, are not willing to expand. The conversation goes both ways. I've been in several African American churches, and there's nobody in there but African Americans. So all cultures have to be open to accepting and expanding the tent. And if you're out looking for a job and you're a white male and there's a job opening at BET, apply. Apply. don't make the assumption that there won't be something for you to gain.
I would agree.
Or do you want to add on to your experience as well from the question?
I feel like, I guess the most recent thing is leaving South Florida and moving to Atlanta, because I didn't expect, in hindsight, I should have expected, but I didn't. I didn't expect it to be so different.
Yeah.
To just bump into people that really like have no idea where Peru lands on the map, or where it is. Like my mom is white blonde hair, my dad dark skin. So someone asked me when I had a picture of my dad's of my family, and they asked me, "Oh, your mom's white," and I go, "No, she's Peruvian." Was that your question? So it's just I guess for me it's just really educating, because it just helped me see that leaving the South Florida bubble, there's a lot of people out there who don't know, and sometimes you can't be mad at them because they haven't been exposed by it.
Correct.
They
I
have
agree with that.
Correct.
their families, they're born and raised in Georgia. They don't know any better. They haven't left at all. So you can't. But it's just trying to mix. I make sure that my social groups, I have my Hispanic crew, but I don't tie myself to them. I like to also expand. I think that's the key. That you guys all said, really surround yourself with diversity and soak it all in.
I just have this really cute Alabama story you reminded me of. Would you like to hear it? Because you made me remember, South Florida is another country, right? You grow up there and you think everyone else is like that, and it's not. So when I first moved to Alabama, I was a newspaper reporter, which is interesting, different from TV, because you call people on the phone, and I didn't sound Southern. And so if I called an African-American house, they would say, "Mama, it's a white woman on the phone." So I would laugh. So I had to do a story about 9 houses going on the National Registry. They were built out of mud during the Great Depression. Birmingham was the hardest hit during the Great Depression. And so I thought, a house made out of mud and is still standing. I want to do that story. I called, set up the interview. The woman was now in her 90s, almost 100. Her 70-something-year-old daughter lived with her. I set up the interview. I drive out. I'd just been in Alabama a week. I knock on the door, and this is what I hear. "Mama, it's a colored gal on the porch." And I said, "Did she just call me colored?" Quick with the attitude. I come in, and she brings her mom, and then she leaves. And, I felt very obviously unwelcome from that, and then just uncomfortable. But I had an attitude. I grew up in Miami, and I thought, I'm going to show these Southerners. And I interviewed this woman, and she was from another era, for sure. And she was endearing. I liked her. I mean, she was something straight out of whatever stereotypical book I could have read about the South. She was a good woman. She was long widowed, and she talked about what it meant and how that generation, with so many values that they have, particularly if you lived through the Great Depression. At the very end of the interview, she said, "Where are you from?" "Miami, Florida." She said, "Is you a mulatto?" Does anyone know what that is? So I read it in slave books, and it's a derogatory term because mules don't sexually, they don't reproduce. And I thought, oh my God, this interview has just gone from bad to worse. And I said, actually, I am. And she said, I always thought, when my husband was alive, I swear this is a true story. You can put it on Twitter. We had a bunch of little ones running around here. I always thought they were the most beautiful children. Of course, I thought, well, were they your husband's kids? But so here she was giving me this sort of backhanded compliment. And it was in that moment that I realized I had to accept this woman.
Yes.
Because she was not going to change. 90-something years old. I needed to accept her for where she was and what she had come through, and how, as offended as I was receiving it, that is not the context that she meant it.
No.
And so I made up my mind at that point, if I was going to be in the South, and you're in Atlanta, which is not a terribly progressive place in so many places. However, that it taught me a lesson about tolerance, and that means just kind of meeting people where they are. That was her life experience, not mine. And I walked out of there and I thought, I'm going to get this chip off of my shoulder because I'm going to come across a lot of that. And I did, and some of it, of course, was mean-spirited. And on both sides, in the Black community as well. Why do you talk like that? I mean, you get it from all places when you are fortunate to grow up in a global community and realize that a lot of other people were not. But it just taught me a lesson about the lack of diversity in some places and your need to be tolerant with people, because really, ignorance is really that. It's just ignorance. There wasn't anything evil in what she said. And I just wanted, you just made me remember that story.
And Barbara's story is really important for all of us because if you have an opportunity, a teachable moment, And I have to, and I know this is longer than 10 minutes because, I actually had somebody tell me that they like Latinos and they eat tacos, and my friend that was sitting next to me who was Latino said, I'm very offended that you said that I'm from Nicaragua and we don't eat tacos. It's a Mexican thing. And I said, it really bothered me that happened because I thought, here's an opportunity for him to say, I'm actually from Nicaragua, we have a different type of food, I'd like to show you what it is. And so I think we should take opportunities for those teachable moments whenever we can.
And I'm so sorry, we don't have we have enough time for more questions, but I cannot allow you to leave, especially with our students, without you giving us maybe just a nugget of advice that's something that you want to give them that you should have, somebody should have given you when you finished school.
As a student, invest at least 20 minutes a week. Invest 20 minutes a week. Pick a day, Sunday, Saturday, Monday, where you're going to invest in your career. Make sure you have a mentor, and make sure you are an expert in whatever it is you want to do. So if you say, I want to be in public relations and entertainment, know who are the top people in the field around the world and why. Not just who they are, and why. And spend that 20 minutes really investing in you and in your capabilities. Because when you are in that interview, you do want to shine and you want to distinguish yourself. And one way of doing that is to demonstrate that you are an expert and that you're bringing not only everything that the University of Florida has given you and everything that your organizations that have helped develop your leadership skills, but that you also are spot on with what really is important in that particular industry or discipline.
Yeah.
Be it.
Thank you.
This is Florida 10 minutes, right?
Yes. Create my own.
I wish that I had heard Peter Drucker's quote earlier, and it was, if you want to predict the future, create it. Thank you.
Love that. Yes.
I would just say in the field of PR and communications, always seek to be your authentic self. This is a field that I think promulgates too much. Assimilation is key. Look a certain way, act a certain way, talk a certain way. Bring your real self to every situation, and you will always win.
Love that.
I would say that never stop learning. It doesn't end when you graduate, because at the end of the day, what you bring to the table is what you know. So if you stop learning, if you stop soaking it all in, your value decreases as you go into the agency world. And I would also say to really find what you like, whether it's not like a specialty, but if it's multicultural communication, if it's healthcare, and really work hard towards that path and make it your own, because you can do it.
Isn't that great?
You guys are great. This is great.
You are
on
5
fire.
of the